Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss an article in the Sunday Times which reveals a little bit of information that Lee Anderson gave to locals which he did not intend for public consumption. And one explosive claim was that Reform UK have been trying to bribe Tory MPs to defect, something which the article notes would be quite illegal. So has Neanderthal shot his mouth off one too many times now? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So this article had a few little points of interest. I'm going to pick up on another one later in the week. But the most explosive claim was that Lee Anderson was approached by Reform UK right at the start of the year to defect for what would amount to a lot of money. The deal, according to the leaked conversation, was that Reform UK would guarantee their MP's salary. So a Tory MP defects to Reform UK, but then loses the next election. Of course they will. Reform UK would keep paying them the equivalent of the MP's salary, which is about £85,000, for 5 years after. So that would be worth, according to the article, about £430,000, right? Now, when you consider there are a great many Tory MPs who would align quite closely with Reform UK, are absolutely going to be losing their seats, no question about it, including Lee Anderson himself. And you could see how such an offer would be highly attractive. Assuming, of course, that it were possible. The article clearly notes that, well, especially that now this information has become public, that the Speaker of the House, Lindsay Hoyle, is likely to ask the Tory Chief Whip to pass on any information they have to the police. The two had already discussed the issue months ago when it was raised, like back in February. But it does make you wonder, is this claim even true? This was, after all, Lee Anderson talking crap in the company of local Conservatives. You could certainly see it as the sort of thing he might say just to reinforce his commitment to the Conservative Party. After all, he used to be a Labour councillor. He only left the party because they were about to jettison him for being a dick. So his commitment to the Conservative Party is not exactly certain. It's quite clear, despite being deputy chair for the party, he's not really aligned with the leadership. He's not quite Swella Braverman level loose cannon, but he has gone rogue a few times. So being able to say that he was offered the safety net of 5 years guaranteed MP salary in return for a defection that they did not get makes him sound like, you know, even though he looks certain to lose his seat even as a Conservative candidate, makes him look like he's committed to the party. Which is very likely the reason for this, because as part of the meeting, and before he actually told the assembled Conservatives, he even said, we're not taping this, are we? Bit of a rookie error. I spend a lot of time talking about how bad Rishi Sunak is at basic politics, but Anderson's a mug as well, isn't he? Never say anything. Anything at all that you don't want recording, because it's so easy these days for anyone to record a conversation covertly. So easy. If you're a politician and you're in the company of anyone you cannot trust 100%, assume they're recording you, right? Because now the Sunday Times has got a recording of Lee Anderson claiming that Reform UK are attempting to commit a very serious crime. It invites not only the possibility of a police investigation, in theory, it could give Reform UK reason to sue Lee Anderson. If it ends up being a hassle for them, they can claim that, you know, that he has caused them reputational damage. Though Anderson had already told the Tory Chief Whip Simon Hart about the approach early this year. But now that the claim is public, you'd think, well, shouldn't there be an investigation? I'm pretty sure someone's going to ask this in Parliament next week. You know, for example, how many Tory MPs have gone to the Chief Whip with things like this? Now, when Richard Tice, who's the chair of Reform UK, was asked for comment, he not only denied that he'd made any such offer, but came up with what is a fairly plausible explanation for the claim. He suggested that Anderson made the story up in order to pressure the Tory leadership to make him deputy chair. Now, this could make sense. Back in February, when Anderson made the claim to his chief whip, Simon, mate, Reform UK are offering me 430 grand to defect to them. He was actively trying to build up his public profile. I'd commented on his efforts at the time. It was quite clear he was actively trying to... He was doing all the social media influencer stuff on his Twitter thing, showing them pictures of his dinner, none of which cost 30p. You know, it was really clear that, and I'd said as much myself at the time, he'd realised that his days in Parliament were numbered. He needed a plan B. My suggestion was he's either trying to get a job on GB News, which he actually did get, or he's trying to raise his star within the party for a chicken run to a safer seat, not necessarily at the next election, but potentially a by-election or the following election. Being made deputy chair absolutely helped him raise his profile. He was made deputy chair in February, presumably just after he claimed he was being bribed to defect, and then offered his job on GB News the following month. So it's certainly plausible that this was all a ploy by Anderson to work on his post-election career. After all, he doesn't seem keen on going back to the sort of income he thinks is fine for others to manage on. And if Reform UK were targeting Conservative MPs with an offer of this kind, I think there'd be a few questions to ask. First, given that it is very illegal, how on earth would they expect to get away with it? Like, imagine under a Labour government particularly, which might fund the National Crime Agency properly, who might investigate corruption like this. Second, why hasn't it worked? Why haven't any Tory MPs defected to Reform? There would definitely be some who know they're losing their seats, they're happy to align their politics with Reform UK and could do with the money. Third, has Simon Hart, the Tory chief whip, had anyone else go to him about such an offer? Like, you wouldn't believe that Reform would only target Anderson. Because it's not even like Reform UK would only be interested in the more famous names. That would be a bigger coup for them. It's not necessary. If even a single Tory MP, one you've never heard of, defected to Reform UK, it would be headline news the next day. It would create so much news for them. If they managed to drip feed a sequence of defections, if they could, let's say they could arrange for like 8, and they spaced them out by a few weeks. So a defection to begin with, rattle the cage, get themselves noticed in the news. Then a few weeks later, another defection. And another one. It would create a real political frenzy. And Tory MPs would be wondering who's next. They'd all be like suspicious of their own colleagues. And it would create something close to panic within the Tory leadership. Not just the number of defections, that won't make a great deal of difference. It's the alarm from the remaining Tory MPs who would use it as an excuse to drop Sunak as a way of dealing with the problem. Because the right of the party, they are desperate to claim that Reform UK are somehow a bigger threat to them in the election than Labour. It's the same gambit the ERG pulled in concert with UKIP to end up with Brexit. Whereas the reality is that Reform UK have had no defections to them. Even Lawrence Fox's batshit Reclaim Party have got an MP. They've got the former disgraced Tory Andrew Bridgen. Reform UK haven't got anyone in Parliament. They would certainly like a defection. Would be a huge boost to them, no matter who it was. The name would be largely irrelevant. So you can certainly imagine that Reform UK would try, and Tice makes no secret of the fact that he discusses such things with Tory MPs, but it just doesn't seem credible that he would attempt to bribe them in a way which risks a serious criminal investigation. After all, after the election, if it's discovered that the defected but losing MPs are receiving this money, that'd be a bit of a giveaway, wouldn't it? Now, I think Anderson did pull a fast one on this, on his own party. I think that's the most likely explanation. I think that shooting his mouth off to a group of people where there was always a risk he would be recorded has maybe dropped him in it. And now that this is all out, you have to wonder if the Tory whips might not be smelling a rat as well. Has Anderson got some explaining to do within his own party? But there we are. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you found the video interesting, please click the like button and subscribe to the channel for further content. And until next time, I'll see you later.